Let's continue with our lectures of human rights. We have seen so many rights, well, some of them in the last two lectures. We are in the part of the course that we are seeing one by one some rights. And today we will continue with this. The learning objectives of today are: first, right to integrity. Second, right to life, always related. And finally, something about a set of rights that are around the characteristics of human being that have to have a sex and sexuality. So as you can see, all of them related to the body, specifically to the body of the human being, well, to the characteristics of the body, the properties. So let's begin with right to integrity. So that is now important to see one interesting battle, quite interesting. The one battle in this place. I don't know if you know which is this place, Mexico, no? Mexico, but 5 centuries ago was not exactly the United States of Mexico. That is the full name, United States of Mexico. But the Aztec Empire. The Aztec Empire was at that time in this place of the place that now is Mexico. No? So it is important more or less to realize how it is, because you can see here with a little more zoom that there is a great lake here, no? In the middle, Tenochtitlan, Tlaopan, and many cities of that time of the indigenous people of the empire of the Aztecs, no? So they were very strong people that ruled all this area, this empire. Let me see. Well, you're helping me, no? When we are meeting people. Nice, I'm seeing that. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So it is important because it was a great empire, but a very bloody, bloody empire, no? And the capital, more or less, is here in this lake, as you can see, no? They were a triple alliance between some indigenous people there, and also, well, so many territories in which they, at the end of the day, they just ask to pay some tax every time to time, but not anything else. In any case, there was a lot of debates about that tax and the well, and specifically also by, well, the war between those tribes, those people, because specifically the Aztecs used to have well, human sacrifice, no? Human sacrifice, but and in an ordinary way. Every year they used to kill in their pyramids, more or less. Well, it's not so clear which will be the number, but probably up to 25,000 people a year. Imagine that, no? So to kill that amount of people, many times they have, well, they use their own people, but they prefer to get some people from these places, no, as you can see. And also they have a wall called the flower wall, that just was to take people to sacrifice in the pyramids, no. So I will give you a zoom of that area, specifically the capital of the Aztec Empire. You can see a very big lake here, okay, and so many towns, cities, and the most important one was in the middle of the lake. Yeah, Tenochtitlan. Now there is Mexico, well, Mexico City, and when it's so big, it's in so many places. But this incredible. Well, you can see that there. These three stars are the three principal peoples, the triple alliance, and that was formed at that time. So let's go again with the map of the lake. You can see here Tenochtitlan better, no? And I think that well, and the Iztapalak, the Tlacopan, and Tepeyac, and the Tepeyac. 1, 2, 3. You can see, and you can see one thing. Well, probably I will put a little bigger. This, no? You can see that the capital of the empire is in an island first, and it means that you have to build bridges to get the island, and they have also a troop of boats to fight and to maintain the title and the property of these places. So this will be very important to explain the battle with Hernán Cortés from Spain, and that would be very interesting. On the other hand, well, you can see, I will put a little now another map of the same area. Seems to be that more or less this is at that time. You can see here better the bridges, and also in the middle of the biggest island, pyramid, no, a temple, the temple. Normally there were two pyramids, one for the sun and another for the moon, and there was a lot of things that they had in mind. It is quite interesting, more or less, to see how it works. That's why the cosmovision of the Aztecs. This is, for example, one of the pyramids. It's not the biggest one. I was there time ago, and probably the biggest one is 2 or 3 times higher. Imagine that, no? And here you can see the staircase, no? They used to sacrifice people here and to throw the people, some parts of the people here. They just used to take, when the people is alive, the heart, and to throw the bodies here. As you can see here, this is a code. This is a code of 5 centuries ago. So it well, 3 and 4, I think so. But this very antique code. This is an historical document. The thing that I'm showing to you. And they used to take with the hand the heart beating, and they used to put the heart in this statue. No, they believe more or less that is related to one god, and they used to offer the life of the people to those gods, especially the god of the sun and the moon, in order to have regular time. We will see a video that will be so interesting. But first is important to more or less to realize this, that this is incredible that the human. Let me see if I will put now a video, but I don't know. Let me see where is the chat? Here is the chat. I don't know why the chat is not appearing. Well, now, finally. If you cannot see the video, I'm sending in the chat the link, and you can see this directly from YouTube. In any case, I will show you now the video, more or less to understand the cosmovision of these people. So let me see, and let me share. If you cannot hear, please, you can say me that. Okay.
Aztec sacrifice, 14th to the 16th century AD. Who were the Aztecs, and why was human sacrificing so important and central to their society? The term Aztec is a modern-day invention to describe the various tribes who make up the Mexica kingdom. They rose to prominence there during the 9th century, and their empire peaked in power and culture from the 14th century until the 16th century, when the Spanish conquered the region, devastating and destroying the Aztecs once and for all in an incredibly short space of time. Ritual sacrifice and self-bloodletting was central to the lives of the Aztecs. Ingrained through ritual and tradition into the Aztec psyche, the concept of blood sacrifice was at the very core of their beliefs. They felt they owed a debt to the gods, one the people should continue to pay every day, otherwise the sun would not rise. The Aztecs firmly believed that the sacrifice of the deities at the beginning of time led to the very creation of the universe, while other gods sacrificed themselves in fire in order to breathe life into the sun. The Aztecs believed in many gods and deities, but by far the most important was Huitzilopochtli, the god of sun and war, who demanded blood in order to be appeased. So individual bloodletting became a daily ritual for the Aztecs, regardless of the age, gender, or social standing of the victim. Animals were also regularly sacrificed in both private and public. Quail was always a popular choice to use, but they also regularly used dogs, eagles, jaguars, and deer. And certain deities, such as the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl, required the sacrifice of butterflies and hummingbirds. Though what really drew the community together was public human sacrifice. They would sacrifice people in public, often prisoners of war, with great pageantry and ritual by the high priest. Such was the demand for human sacrifices, scholars cannot agree on an exact figure, but believe it was between 1,000 to 25,000 a year. Aztec warriors in battle would often wound an opponent rather than kill him in order to capture him and bring him back for human sacrifice. It is widely believed that many of their wars were motivated by the need to gather more victims and as a way of intimidating neighboring states. They would normally kill these victims by the use of a sacred sacrificial dagger, as it was believed their blood would give life to the sun, each drop slowly reviving it in order to give it the strength to rise again each and every day. The freshly cut out heart would then be placed by the priest in a stone vase and was either incinerated and offered to the sun for it to consume, or was eaten by the high priest. Often these victims for human sacrifice would impersonate a deity, and their sacrifice would mimic the one that the god had once given in the past. They were dressed up and acted like the chosen deity, and were treated by others very highly, like they were celebrities. Their title was seen as a true honor, and after they had been executed, their body parts were eaten by the people, often the ruling class, in order to please the gods even further. One particularly gruesome ritual would see prisoners of war dressed up to look like various gods, who would then be sacrificed, have their hearts cut out, and their skin flayed from their dead bodies. Their skins would then be worn by the priest as a costume to represent the deity. The festival being held determined how the sacrificial ceremony was carried out, as the Aztecs were a complicated people with an advanced social culture. A common thread throughout these sacrifices was that the heart of the victim would be cut out and the still pulsating organ would be held up high for all to see. At the very center of the Aztec religious world was the Great Temple, which was an impressive pyramid with twin shrines on top, one for Tlaloc, the god of rain, and the other for Huitzilopochtli, the god of war. It was situated in the Aztecs' capital city of Tenochtitlan, which is New Mexico City today. Here, countless human sacrifices were carried out by the high priests. Normally, the heart of the victim was ripped out, and then the corpse was beheaded, dismembered, and then the lifeless body was thrown down the steps of the temple to fall 180 feet to the base of the pyramid below. The heads of the sacrifice were then put on skull racks at the base of the temple. This sacrifice was a mythical reenactment of the story of the sun and war god Huitzilopochtli, who took his sister, the moon goddess Coyolxauhqui, dismembered her body, and then threw her down Coatepetl, the sacred serpent mountain. In the reenactment, the steps of the temple doubles for the Serpent Mountain. Most sacrifices at the Great Temple were prisoners of war or slaves, but also children were sacrificed as their tears were deemed to be linked to Tlaloc, god of rain. These traditions went on for hundreds of years, until March 1519, when a Spaniard by the name of Hernan Cortés, heading a small expedition, invaded the Aztec Empire. Within 2 years, the Aztec Empire had crumbled, conquered by the Spanish, and its population decimated by smallpox. With this and the arrival of Christian missionaries and their powerful backers, many of the Aztec ways and rituals of human sacrifice were confined to the pages of history, once and for all. But occasionally, despite the Spanish invaders trying to eradicate this practice and all monuments to it, some artifacts have still survived to this day, including ceremonial skull towers and skull racks.
Well, I don't know. It's incredible, this kind of
Aztec sacrifice.
It's incredible how these kind of things happen, no? I prefer to put a cartoon, but there is also a movie of Mel Gibson called Apocalypto. I don't know if any one of you has seen this movie, but it's very, very impressive. I was surprised. Well, I just saw the part of that movie, and I prefer not to see all of them of that movie. So, but it's incredible that these kind of things happened here and in many places around the world. No, so fortunately, we were able to change so many of those customs. No? But the interesting thing for our subject is, well, the battle first and the idea that were behind that. I don't know if you know this guy. This was the king of the Aztec Empire, no, in Montezuma. Now there is a beer and with that name, very famous there. But in any case, it's because that was the king of the Aztec Empire. And on the other hand, remember, this is more or less 1520, the 16th century. Some years before that, the Spaniards discovered that there is another continent called, well, at the very beginning, they were thinking that was Asia, but it was not. It was a new continent. They realized after that, and when they realized that, they tried to
Sa, you've muted yourself.
I don't know. No. Well, yeah. So I don't know how it happened because I didn't do anything. In any case, now you can hear me. And on the other hand, well, there were the conquerors, the Spaniards, in this case, Hernán Cortés. Hernán Cortés. Hernán Cortés. They were a lot of people trying to get the possession of the continent or some kind of alliance or well, many things, no? And that's why between them there were many battles between the Spaniards, no? Among them, for example, Narvaez and Pedro Alvarado tried also to have to have to have the power to of those all the area, all the land. In any case, they were well the indigenous people, you know. The very beginning seems to be that the relations with the Aztecs were more or less good, more or less good. Indeed, King Montezuma sent so many gifts to the Spaniards, gold, jewelry, and things, no? At the very beginning. It was more or less a good relationship at the very beginning. But there were some problems also with some other tribes, because remember the Aztecs were the one who with the power, no? That with the power in a very big region, asking taxes, no? So Hernan Cortés decided, well, let's talk. I will not be here talking with Montezuma. I will live here from here, and I will put here a guy, Pedro Alvarado, yeah, that will be with the Montezuma, more or less like a prisoner, like a guest, more or less at the very beginning. And I will go to discuss with another people. At that time, the Aztec Empire could have 200,000 warriors. And Hernan Cortés at that time, at the very beginning, just 1,000 warriors, nothing. No? Obviously, with guns, arms, cannons, and especially horses, no? At the very beginning. So he decided to go back. There were many battles between among the Spaniards, as I told you, and he left the capital, Tenochtitlan, well, and that's why things happen as happened. What happened then? Well, that there was a festival, More or less, the Spaniards were, remember, in good relations, well, with Montezuma, but they took more or less like a prisoner, a good prisoner, a guest, more or less, in the middle of the capital was Pedro Alvarado. So the Aztecs began to prepare the annual festival of Toxcalt in early May, more or less, in honor of the Tzatlipoca. It's hard also to pronounce the names of the feast, well, and the gods. But in any case, otherwise known as the smoking mirror or the omnipotent power. So Alvarado, the Spaniards, agreed to allow the festival on the condition that there will be no human sacrifice. He said, you can You can have your festival, but there will be no human sacrifice. This is not human. The sacrifice involved the killing of a young man who had been impersonating the Tox cult deity for a full year. Imagine that, no? Thus, prohibiting human sacrifice during the festival was for the Aztecs an unattainable proposition. So the things were not going so well, and Alvarado became suspicious about the eventuality of human sacrifice. I'm seeing that the host is muting myself. I don't know what happened. Well, in any case. So after that suspicious of Alvarado, he tortured priests and nobles and discovered that the Aztecs were planning a revolt. Unable to assert control over events, he requested Montezuma and increased the guards around Tlatoani. So at the day of the feast, the Aztecs initiated the serpent dance. The euphoric dances, as well as the accompanying flute and drum playing, disturbed so much Alvarado about the potential revolt. He had in mind that there would be a revolt against the Spaniards. In the next act, he ordered the gate closed and initiated the killing of many thousand Aztec nobles, warriors, and priests. Imagine that, no, in the feast. So Alvarado was absolutely in the first battle against the Aztecs with not so many people. So, and this is interesting, no? Well, at the very beginning, well, there were many fights and things, but in any case, Alvarado forced Montezuma to appeal to the crowd outside the palace, and this appeal temporarily calmed them. So there was a calm, no? But absolutely, as you can see, people all obeyed at the first time. In the first time, the king, but the event had the result of the resolutely turning all the Aztecs against the Spaniards and completely undermining Montezuma's authority. So, because, yeah, they realized you are with the Spaniards, not with us, no? So, what happened? That Cortés realized that there were many problems. He took care of the situation, and he attempted to parley with the Aztecs, and after this failed, he sent Montezuma to tell his people to stop fighting. However, they were fighting, and the Aztecs refused all kind of talks. The Spanish asserted that Montezuma was stoned to death by his own people as he attempted to speak with them. Well, 3 stones hit him, and finally Montezuma refused all medical help as well as food, and died soon after the attack. So this guy, poor king, passed away that night. No, but the fight between them, the Spaniards and the Aztecs, continue, and even more fiercely. There was a second, the successor of Montezuma, that is called Cuauhtemoc. He was in charge of the battle and the leader of the Aztecs after Montezuma. So, and this is very interesting because uh, because after that, well, they realized that we have no people in the island and tried to fight against them. But the fight was so difficult. They had some horses, but imagine a horse in the middle of these islands. Well, it's not so easy to see the combat. No, and there were many things on the battle, and Cortés see that he had he had to escape, and he did that. No, and he did that in a night. The sad night is called La Noche Triste in Spanish. No, in a rainy night with no moon, and that helped so much to pass in the middle of the Aztecs, of the warriors, and to escape. But he realized that was not so easy. So many boats of the Aztec Empire attacked him, and he lost almost 70% of the warriors. So imagine that, no? Of his troops, well, he lost because trying to escape. So that was at the very beginning. But what happened that after that? That he realized that the battle with the first that you have to change your strategy. And remember that Cortés was dealing with some others peoples, other tribes that were ruled by the Aztecs and didn't want the Aztecs, and he make a coalition against the Aztecs. And after that, he realized that the war should be so different. No? So after a fault in the defense, he decided, well, let's build 30 ships, 30 ships to attack the Aztec Empire. And with 30 ships, the second battle, well, he with against the boats of Cuauhtemoc, and also with the allies, and also with cannons, and also with many things. Well, he was able to defeat the Aztecs, no? And with that, as you know, he was able to reach the other ocean and to continue to Asia, no? And that was more or less the story of the invasion. No? But it's interesting because many times we used to put in our mind, well, the conquerors are the bad people. In some sense, yes, but the Aztec empires were not so good guys always. That's why they had a lot of enemies, and when the Spaniards come, well, they decide to follow the Spaniards to be liberated. No, I know many stories about South America in which many tribes peoples were worst with for example in my country the indigenous people of my country were worse with the Inca that is from Peru, because they had, for example, no right to home. No? The Incas had all the rights. No? There was no property for the ruled people as my country at that time. And that's why it was so easy for the Spaniards to get an alliance with them, because they didn't want. And then the things were not so good, not so bad as in the past, I think so, but not so good, obviously. That's why at the end of the day, they declared the independence. But in any case, it is interesting to see. Well, this is the battle, a picture of the battle, painting La Conquista de México por Cortés. And as you can see here in this picture, you can see the ships and the boats of the Aztecs. Yeah, the change of strategy of Cortés was quite successful. Here you can see it was a battle of 75 days in 1521. No? And well, there was just one ship, and here you can see the city of Tenochtitlan, Mexico now, and all the fights here, and the pyramid here with the temple and many things, no? And the other island. And well, this is the Battle of Tenochtitlan. And after falling Tenochtitlan, well, the empire fell. You can see here more or less the Spaniards. How many of the Spaniards were? Well, just not some casualties. Well, 1,000 and 20,000 those of the allies, no? And on the other hand, well, so many more in the other side, more or less 100,000 killed in action, no? And Cuauhtemoc, well, he was the commander, and on the other side, you can see how many allies were against the Aztec at that time, no? And so many people there, no? And the belligerents, no? The Triple Alliance, the rulers of the Aztec Empire, on the other side, well, so many tribes, and also the Spaniards, and the strength, no? The strength. Well, as you can see, 400 war pirates, and on the other hand, well, they have here, say, just 13 lake brigantines. I think that there were more, but in any case, more or less you have a picture of what was the battle, and the thing that put fire to the water was the human sacrifice. That is interesting, no? Why is interesting that? Because you will remember this slide. That was Francisco Vitoria. He was one of the guys that thought that, well, there was not right to conquer any territory in America, no? And after a question of the Pope, a question of the monarchs, he investigated the legitimacy of claims to land dominion by the Indians of Latin America. And he expounded his theory of natural rights and famous relectio de Indies. He said, all of us have equal dignity, and that's why we have the same rights, more or less, no? But why we can go there? I'm repeating the things that I mentioned you. And he said, well, there could be many reasons that we can go there, no? First, friendship, no? We can talk with anyone in the world. No. Second, well, commerce. We can trade things, goods, assets with anyone in the world, no? And that's a title to be there. Third, if there is a problem in those people because they are doing things that are not human, are against ethics, against law, natural law, well, we have to stop that. We have to stop that. And that was an effort. And you can show that in the video that after the apparition of the Spaniards there, well, all these kind of things stopped. And that was a title, no? But on the other hand, you cannot be there just because they have know your religion, not because well, they have no land, because well, no, and so he was against so many theories of that time, and that's why now Francisco de Vitoria is called one of the father of the founders of the humanitarian law, like, because he said, well, if there are people doing human sacrifices in such a way that is so common every day, 25,000 a year, in that incredible way, with a lot of well, dismembrations and very bad things, as you can show in the video. Well, we have to stop that because that is not good for anyone. So, and that is Francisco de Vitoria and the theory that after the Aztec Empire, he developed seeing that kind of things. And this is the story of the battle of today. And we will, that is quite related to the things that we are seeing now. We are seeing the rights related to the properties of the human being. The human being has active being, human soul, body, and actions. And there is a lot of properties. We are seeing little by little some of them with a special detail. You have all of them in the code, fortunately. Yeah. I mentioned also in the books of human rights that I sent you of so many case laws that are around these kind of things. Well, today we will see the last properties of the body. That is half-life, be ephemeral. Well, we have to die someday. Enjoy the integrity of each part, of the parts of the body. We can appreciate now that the Aztec Empire didn't respect so much these kind of rights, the right to the integrity and to life, and to be sexed, be perceived and abundant. So we will focus now our attention in the property of integrity, the right to integrity. First question, what is integrity? It seems to be easy to know. Integrity. Integrity of which part? That is a second, a little hard question. Which kind of part? What we are talking about when we talk about integrity? Well, for example, this is, well, integrity is, this is a phrase of C.S. Lewis. The integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. So what is integrity? Seems to be so different here, the notion of C.S. Lewis from the integrity of the body. What do you think that is integrity, and which parts could be included? Anyone of you want to try? No one. It's too early in the morning. Too hard to think about things. Which kind of part we are talking about? Yes, Joy.
I think
it's my joy to hear you.
Wow. I think we're talking about all the parts of the human body have integrity, because the human being is a unity. So you can't really divide the parts of the human being. They all work together, so they all have integrity. Okay, good. But do you think that is just the integrity of the body? This phrase of the C.S. Lewis seems to be that he's thinking in another thing, not the body. Okay, I think it could be all the, I'm not sure though. I think it could be all the properties of the human being. So I
Perfect.
don't know.
What it means, good, very good. What it means, try to develop a little more.
Okay, let me think about it, then I'll get back to you.
Okay. Any other of you want to try? Yeah, I know very well the answer, but you have that in the code, and you have in some of the, not so many, yes, Calvin, in some of the international treaties of human rights, not in so many.
We say
Yes,
integrity of the mind.
of the mind, very good. That's in another aspect of integrity. Let's develop a little more.
Okay.
What kind of integrity of the mind?
Moral integrity, I would say. Moral integrity. I mean the
Moral
integrity
integrity.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, to stand by decisions and stand by them. I mean to make decisions and stand by them. To be what? What can I say? I want to say strong-willed, but that's a bit out of the sphere. But yes,
Okay, very good.
yeah,
Very good. Yeah.
to be decisive.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, we don't know really how to think about that, but probably you're saying, well, the will. Probably we can develop a little more the integrity of our projects of life. If we have a project of life to be in this way, we will have to be coherent with that project, and that is integrity. Doing the right thing even when no one is watching us. Yeah, because I'm focusing my project and the project in good things, in the things that I understand that are good. Well, and I will do that not because someone is seeing me. No. There is another. Well, there are many kinds of integrity. I will show you. But any one of you wants to try the last one? We have said first integrity of the body, the answer of Joy. Second, of the mind, the mental integrity, the answer of Calvin. And there is another in one human right treaty. Just one. It's incredible. Well, I know that could be hard, and that's why it is not, for example, in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Tasneem, let's try.
I'm not sure, but perhaps a merger of the two, so the integrity of the human as a being, something of the sort.
Something like that, yes. The psychological integrity is also called. That is a merger of the intellect and the body. Yes. Yes. More or less, you got the answer. So I was amazed because I never saw that the notion of integrity in so many treaties, not in the Universal Declaration, but just in the African chapter. That in the Article 4, you can find that human beings are inviolable. Every human being shall be entitled to respect for his life, and the integrity of his person. Here you have not the specifications, but at least the right that is so important, no? And the things related to that right that also, no? The inviolability and no deprivation, arbitrarily deprivation of his right, well, could be more or less related. A little, not so much developed, is in the American Convention that you have. This is tricky because there are two versions, in English and in Spanish, both official. But in English, the title is Right to Human Treatment, and in Spanish is the Right to Integrity. So it's just the translation is different, no? Personal integrity. So and in the first point, paragraph of the Article 5, you can read, no, every person has the right to have the physical, mental, and moral integrity. Well, also related moral integrity with the thing that we mentioned. What is moral integrity? We will talk about that. There are so many other paragraphs. The second of them says this: no one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhuman, or degrading punishment or treatment. All person deprived of their liberty shall be treated with respect for the inherent dignity of the person, of the human person. Well, this is quite interesting because you can see that the part of the right to integrity is not to be tortured, not to suffer cruel and inhuman or degrading punishment or treatment. For me, it's so clear. One of the ways of torture or inhuman and degrading punishment is to cutting people in many pieces or part of the people. Yeah, the right to integrity seems to be one of the nuclear rights or the most important rights. And also, as you know, and as we have said, is an absolute right not to be tortured. Absolute. There are so few things that the human rights jurisprudence say with that are absolute rights, not to be tortured, not to have a slave, to be a slave. Both things are absolute rights. And so we can hear there is another convention, I think, not convention but optional, about the child rights that mention also something about the right to integrity, but on the others you cannot see. So good for both. Let's see now a little develop. The good thing with theory is you can develop a little more than are approved in the human rights or in the case law. The notion and types of integrity, limit 196. No? It is proper to the human being to have the characteristic of integrity of all his parts, obviously. No? And we have seen, well, the parts of the being, the existence, Tasnim remembered that, the intelligence, the will, the body, and in each one of them there are parts. No? Human integrity is basically founded on the ontological unity of the person. Remember when we saw the human being, the existence, we saw that the existence have a unity, and this will be so important to understand life and now to understand integrity, because there is a deepest unity. The bodily integrity is just the integrity of the parts, but there is another deep unity, that is the unity of the person. The person unifies everything, and that's why we have seen that can also unify other things. The technique, the properties are united to me, and many other things. Well, the following are aspects related to the integrity of the body. We are focusing now our attention on the body. First, it is the corporeal things. No? It has all parts of the human body functionally and harmoniously organized. So it's not just to have the hand, but also work in the hand. No? That because it's not a torture. A torture is to put, for example, something here and the blood cannot circulate. Well, this is against integrity. The functional integrity of the body. You have your hand, but it's not working because you are tortured. Yeah, that's why it's not just a matter of have or not have, it's also a functional unity. Well, and according also to the spiritual principle that gives it unity, life and identity. Well, you can see here, well, this now, the unity of all the system, the heart working well and the brain also, and many things. The genetic integrity, that is also so important today. We realize that we have a great code, developed among centuries. Well, as you can see here, especially here in Kenya, because you have so many bones, archaeological discoveries and things. Well, our genes, we have an incredible treasure inside of us, and that's why we have to protect the treasure, our integrity of genes. There is a lot of things now about experimentation with genes, and we have to take care. We will see some principles of health and life, how to take care of the human beings, goods, with some principle. We will see. In any case, you can see that integrity also covers this part of the body. The sexual integrity is so clear. I think that is part also of this right, and so clear, I think there is some case law that talk about that, that sexual integrity is part of the right to integrity, that in so many ways, as you can know. Psychosomatic integrity, yes, and our psychology should be integrated with the thing that we are. We have not the psychology of a cat. I love cats. I especially love lions and cheetahs, but I'm not a lion. No, I'm not a cheetah. No. And I cannot have the psychology of a thing that I'm not. No. Of an animal or a plant. There are so many crazy people around the world, trying to change. There is and so many people say that could be a kind of illness or a situation or condition of this of the mind of those people that believes that they are some animal, some pet, and used to change their behavior, acting as a cat. And finally, the integrity of human projects. The thing that we were discussing with Calvin, integrity of human projects, and especially of the existential project, especially of that, that is called moral integrity. Moral integrity approved also in the American Convention of Human Rights. Is related to the body in some way. In which way? Because the body is the manifestation of the spirit. The things that we have in our mind are manifested in our face, in our tongue, in our actions. We have another word. Yeah, the extension of the person is also outside. We said, no, you have a unity and we can unify heritage, assets, goods, properties, or patrimony. So that's why we can talk about also the integrity of our home and the integrity of our things. Okay. So another question. does integrity is always necessary or not? This is a hard question. It's not, well, no, this is an easy question. This is not so hard. Or some, and I will put the same question in a second version. Can we cut one part of our body? It's so easy with our property, no? Can I sell some property? Yes. Can I mutilate, for example, some parts of our body? Yes, Abdirahman.
Perhaps no, because you said that the human is inviolable, and it will violate the human dignity itself.
Yeah. Try to another answer. Joy.
I think it goes back to the fact that the human being is a unity. So all the parts of the body function together, like they work together. So removing one will take away from the unity of the person. So I think integrity is always necessary.
Try to see the picture, the graphics that I'm showing you in the screen. Yes, Joy. Yeah, no, peace. No, nice peace.
Okay, after you said we tried to see the picture, I'm not sure if my answer is correct, but I wanted to say that I think you can, for example, you can cut off like a finger. Oh my God, I can see your face. You can cut off a finger, but you should not, because the integrity is always necessary for the unity of the body for it to function, but it is possible. But I think if you
no, in fact, yeah, in fact, many things. Human sacrifice also is in fact possible, but we are talking about in the law. Okay, okay. And Rosalind.
I think yes, if a part of the body, for example, is ridden with disease and you need to save the person, then in that case you can cut off part of their body.
Okay, that is an interesting answer, but I agree with all of you, also with Rosalind, because normally not, but if there is a reason, yes. If there is a reason, yes. Abdirahman, do you want to say something more? No. Okay, perfect. I saw that you were raising your hand. Okay. So the answer is normally no, as you answer, and you answer good, well. But there could be some cases that yes, that you need, for example, if you have some disease and the doctors say to you, say that, well, if we don't cut your finger, you will die because the same heart will develop in not a good way and you will die. What you will do? Well, please, please, I want to survive, no? I want to survive, and it's better to survive than to be dead without a finger or without any other part, or without a kidney, for example, or something else, no? So, but the general rule is not. We have to maintain the integrity of the person. That is the rule, and you answered good in this. But if there is some issue that should be so important, well, probably if you fulfill the requirement, you will be able to do a transplant. And this is more or less related to the principle of totality, the totality. We have seen just a little mention when we have seen the properties of the being, of the existence. We will see now with a lot of detail this. When we can do a transplant between here, first between one human and to another world. First, when the donation is made freely, obviously, you you cannot kidnap to or sequester or take any people that don't want to give his kidney, to take the kidney and to put to another one. Well, obviously, that is not legal. You have to ask the donor if she wants to give to the self, because it's self-donation, it's donation of the person. It's not just the donation of an asset. It's the self-donation, donation of the person here. Second requirement, the life of the donor or its operability, if alive, should not be exposed to excessive damage or risk. Okay, this is obviously I cannot do a surgery of a kidney to take the kidney of some person if I know that with that surgery this person will die. No? Well, because I'm trying to save one life, but to save one life I cannot kill another. Yes, it's obvious. It's obvious. I think that you agree. There is a little nuance between two kinds of donations, no? Between living people and between a person who passed away and another that is still alive. No? You can read here. No? Paired vital organs can only be transferred between living people if the life of the recipient patient is at stake. Obviously, no. If everything is good, well, if I don't need this, but I think, oh, I want to have the face of another guy because I like so much the way that he looks. Well, there is no need there. No, there is no need. I cannot do a transplant because, well, I want that. No? Well, that is interesting. No? On the other hand, we have to verify, to certify that some other is dead to take their organs. No? And this is crucial. And many times people don't do that because many doctors say, well, we know that this guy will die, but it's better to take the organs now when he is alive because the organs will be better, in better disposition. And many times without asking that he wants, if he wants to the donation or anything, they take alive, like the Aztecs. They took the heart beating when in that time to God. Nowadays to put in another body. No? But in any case, seems to be that we are harming and damaging in that way the rights of the people, the rights of the person who are alive. No? So if the donation is post-mortem, it will be clearly verified the death of the donor. Okay, after that verification, we can take the organ. Before that, no, because we will do a non-human surgery, a cruel treatment, as well as the Aztecs. Yeah. Another thing, The recipient has been legitimately chosen without negative discrimination. There are many problems here, no? Because many times, well, there is an organization around the world to transplants of things, specifically for the things that are not so common. I have a sister that suffered a transplant of the 2 lungs, the heart, and the kidney, 4 organs at the same time. Well, she was in a list for several years trying to waiting to the transplant. No? And that list should be in order. No, obviously, it will make no sense if the list is in the order of the people that have money. No, because, well, it's a self-donation, it's the donation of the person. It's the donation of the person. Yeah, that her story is a miracle, it's a miracle. My family will never can afford that. Was the insurance that, well, I can tell you many things about that story. She's writing a book of her story, but it's incredible, no? But it's clear, no? We cannot discriminate to who will we give the organs just because that. Okay. Another requirement. Well, I can tell you a little more stories about my sister that is incredible. The recipient or his representative obviously has accepted the transplant. I cannot put an organ if the person don't want to receive that. It will be a waste of time, money, and many things. No, this is important. No, there are so many cases that we will see after the principle of the health how it works. But it is so clear, no, that if someone, because for example, an old guy decided, well, I'm an old and I have not decided to suffer a stone surgery, but probably is first he has the right, and second, probably morally is acceptable. It's acceptable that in some cases we will see with a little more detail, but now we are talking just about transplant. The recipient is in a serious need of that transplant. This is also a thing, no, that is interesting. No? If you are not in a need, well, you cannot do many things. You cannot mutilate yourself. There is a story of many people, well, not many, a few people, and also an actress that gutted the breast because he was with some fear of suffering the future cancer. So she decided to cut herself to prevent any possibility. But he was not suffering any cancer, any disease, anything. It just was the fear that probably in the future what will happen. Well, this is not a strong reason to mutilate anyone, obviously, no? Even ourselves. If it's ourselves, just ourselves, probably it's a moral issue, no? If there is a repercussion in external things, for example, if you are using money of other people, if you are using taxes, well, it's also not just a moral thing, but also a legal issue. Okay. There are no less the sixth requirement. There are no less harmful means to resolve the patient's needs. It's so clear that, no? If instead of cutting my finger. I can just take a pill. I have to take a pill. I cannot put my finger, no? For overcome the disease. The transplant offers high chances of success, obviously, no? If I will do a transplant to take off one of my organs, but I know that that is so risky and probably I will die there in the surgery. Well, it is not admissible to do that. No? In any case, if there is a lot of risk, the disease is so serious. Well, and you have an experiment that could help, probably is proportional, a proportional measure to have that surgery. Then the transplantation does not impair the integrity of the identity of the recipient. Well, why? Why? Because there are people that just want to change. No? This is not so easy to understand today for many people. Today, many people say, well, if I want to put another eye here, no, and I want to be a cyborg. I don't know if you have seen the movie of Cyborg. If I want to be a cyborg, well, I can do whatever I want with myself. Well, and what about human identity? Human identity is a value. It's a value. It's a treasure that we've gained over million years, developing the environment little by little, or DNA. No, it's really a treasure that we have, and we have to protect. All values we have to protect, and our DNA is a value. Our identity as a humankind. There are another thing that is, when you change your identity, probably you're destroying your psychology many times. I don't know if you know the story of the first man that suffered a transplant of his hand. Well, was incredible. Was incredible, that story, because he lost his hand in an accident. At one point, the medicine was able to transplant the hand of one person to another. Obviously, that person passed away very early, and they took the hand of that person and insert the hand in this guy. But he had a shock, a psychological shock, because when he saw his hand, well, he realized that is not my hand, that is not my hand, that is not myself. Such a shock that at one point he decided to cut his hand, his new hand, because he was not able to support that. And he could, he had a second surgery just to take it off once again, because was worst, the thing that he was suffering in his mind, psychology, than to have another hand. Today, the doctors realize that it's better to have a bionic hand, psychologically talking, no? If you have an instrument that is more or less with iron and many things, no, you realize that, well, this is not from another guy. Yeah. So, and this is when things are here, no. But there are people that put the face of another person, and they had a lot of problems also, no. Are incredible cases, no. I know that in the case of a woman, that I think that one of his relatives, I don't know if it was his husband, put the gun in here and shoot, but the gun of rifle, no? Well, many things. He destroyed the face of his wife. Well, he decided to change absolutely his face with the face of another, and he realized well, there was a lot of problems. In any case, at one point, well, he could, and this happened in many of those cases, with a knife, his own face, because she didn't accept the new face that she had. Many times in this case also, it helps so much to have, well, so many things inside, bionic things, and it's not always possible. There are people suffering so much. It's not so easy to see what kind of measure would be the best one in each case. And if there is doubt about these kind of things, many times there is less legal responsibility, and you have many things that you can do because, well, you are just trying to help, you know, in the better way. But in any case, as a principle, we can put here, you know, that the prostration as a requirement also requires that the surgery doesn't impair the integrity of the identity of the recipient. Okay? With this, any question about this? Are incredible things here, no? As you can see. Okay, so let's go ahead with the break. We have seen the right to integrity, at least some issues. There is by the way, now you have some treaties, some declarations, proclamations on human rights also, but also an individual regulation about these kind of things, especially on integrity of the person, no? How to protect the integrity of the person also in surgeries and so many things. Okay, 10 minutes of break. Let's see in 10 minutes. Hi, again. How are you? Let's continue with our lecture. Now we will see right to life. We will focus in this right, and as always, remember the methodology that we learned on jurisprudence. To develop our knowledge of some right, first we have to understand as much as we can the reality. And here the reality is life. So our first question now is, what is life? Then what is life for? Aims, many things, properties, and those kind of things. But this is a big question, no? What is life? And we can focus also the question, do all these apples have life or not? Or someone who have a little more life or not? What do you think about what is life? This is an important issue, because if we don't know what is life, we don't know what we should protect. Yes, Abdirahman, yes.
First, before you even go to the purpose of life and all that, I think just the act of being alive. Yeah, being alive, like biologically being alive. Yeah.
Yeah, but what is life?
Existence.
Existence, but a stone may have also existence.
True. True.
Peace.
I think life is when something, so a human, an animal, or a plant has the body and the soul. So the aspect of, because for example, a stone doesn't have a soul.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when you have both the
When
body
we see the soul, there is life.
yeah, maybe.
I'm joking. well, but it's not so easy to. Yeah, if you follow Aristotle, yes, every plant, every animal have some kind of soul, not an immaterial soul that will subsist after death. But he said that, but it's not so easy. It's not so easy, that definition. Calvin.
Okay, so I would classify life as a collection of experiences. And I would say no, the apples do not have life.
Do not have life, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. It's your opinion. Enoch, yes.
I would say life is a principal force, or the principal force that is considered to underlie the distinctive quality of animate beings. So in that question, is this apple alive? No.
It's hard question, no? Tasnim, don't you want to try?
Yes, so I was thinking that life may be related to growth.
The growth, yeah, that is one characteristic of every life. Yeah.
And then perhaps.
But it's not exactly the same. But I'm sorry.
I was also thinking other characteristics like mobility as well.
Yeah, and that is not our characteristics of both kind of lives, but some of yeah, in some sense, yes. Mobility, yes. And you need just one thing more. You are so close. Peace.
I don't think I'm answering what Tasnim is asked. I don't think I have the one thing, but I think the apples have life because of the characteristics of life. So there's reproduction, there's breathing, locomotion, growth, and I think at least the apple plant had those things. So in
that is interesting. When you put the apple, yeah, probably is the beginning of the end. Or the beginning of a new plant.
Yeah. So yeah, that's why I think they have life.
Yeah. But you mentioned a very interesting thing, no? Growth, reproduce. This is the characteristic of the plant, the vegetal life. Enoch, yes.
I would say the last thing is reaction to stimuli, or yeah.
Reaction. Okay, that is a characteristic of, especially of the animals, not of the plants, not of the vegetables, not of the apple. Yeah. Well, that is interesting. The thing that is mentioned, you can see that apple, no? If you can put an apple, you have an apple 100 days, there will be no life. Why? And the apple, the red apple is quite different. No, probably that could be a new plant. Tasneem, yes, you want to add anything?
So when Peace talked about the, okay, I have a suggestion of what life could be as well from what Peace said, and I think it's through life is the creation and the death of something.
The creation.
Life, yeah.
Well, but we can create also a novel, an essay, and the death we destroy or essay. Well, is yeah. God creates also things with life and things without life.
Then biological creation.
You were so close. Well, biological. What means biological? So let's see another apple. This is the easiest notion of life. Very old notion, self-movement. Probably you have to develop a little more the same notion, but this self-movement. That's why Tasneem was so close. She said, it's movement. Another said, no, it's reaction. But what kind of movement? Not the same movement of a stone. I can throw you a stone, a rock. I will rock you. But obviously that rock have no life because it's not the movement of the same rock. But if I am the cause, the agent that I'm throwing you that stone. But it's quite different. It's quite different. See this apple again, the red one, not the apples that have 100 days and are not red. No, the red one you can put in the ground, in the earth, and probably you have a tree of apples. So, because when it's still alive, can reproduce, can grow, but specifically have the principle of the movement inside of the red apple. There is the principle of movement. That is the seeds, no? If you plant the seeds, you will have a tree. There is a principle. Self-movement needs a principle of movement, but not outside, but inside of the apple. Not outside as the rock that I can throw you and will be some movement of the rock, but also especially inside of the thing. So after that, we can develop a little more the notion of life. I will say the characteristics are principally the self-movement or movement produced from within the being, not from outside, from inside, within. The second, that is, all of them are related. All of them are more or less the same thing, but develop a little more. The unity of the being that self-moves. Because if you have, for example, two apples, probably they have the life are two different lives. Yeah, one will be one tree and another a second tree. There are not one life, but two lives. Yeah, so when we can say that one thing have life, first we should see what is one thing. And there should be one autonomy. Third requirement, or characteristic, or whatever you want. The internal principle potentially contains a harmonic order of movement. This is so important in intellectual property. In intellectual property, you can register some inventions, also some new discoveries of life. Yeah, but what it means, a new discovery of life? Well, For example, I am making so many experiments. Now I realize that I found a new plant. Okay, but I will go to the office of the intellectual property of any country, and I will register that. But if the plant doesn't live more than 1 day, I will not be able to patent that as a new life, new form of life. There is a lot of issues in those departments of intellectual property, but they consider, well, this is not life because it no longer exists more than a day. The life should be what is a principle of self-movement, potentially with an harmonic order with some time. Well, I think that it's better explained here, no? The movement produced by the internal principle is related to certain growth, development, or perfection proper to the individual and the species. And but let's go to this. There are three characteristics that we see always in the basic forms of life, no? To born, growth, and probably death. Probably, no? But to develop the perfection. Growth, what it means? Development of perfections, but not any kind of perfection. The perfections that are proper to the principle of internal movement, of self-movement. No? Now, as you can see, well, this is a characteristic of life. No? And finally, the internal principle ends up ordering the same individual to the point that it creates an organism. Now, there is a movement that all things are related in the things that are alive. No? The effects of self-movement remain within the individual. Yeah, you can see, for example, mosquito. No, well, the mosquito is a totality in unity with self-movement for their own ends. Well, any kind of mosquito. So its own ends. So you can see the wings have some purpose, and the kind of type of mouth, one purpose. All things are related, no? It's an organism. It's an organization of parts to some purpose, some specific purpose. Well, that is interesting, no? Because the principle of self-movement have some purpose. That is the idea, no? More or less, this is life. Any question about the notion? Any critique about the notion of life? These are characteristics of the self-movement. You can develop all these 5 characteristics just thinking what it means, self-movement. Any question? No. So this is crucial because when we talk about human life, we have to see what kind of characteristics are in the first stages of the human life to see when the human life begins, when we have a human being alive. Yeah, it is crucial. And the only way is to check in, to put a check. This characteristic is we can be verified here. Yes, no, check. And when we verify the 5 characteristics, we will see we have a human being, we have to protect that. So you will remember this video. I think that is important. I will repeat again. We have seen this video in jurisprudence, but now we are seeing with a lot of deep insights of the characteristics of life. Okay.
So here we have the reproductive tract. the uterus, the vagina, cervix, fimbriae, and uterine tube, also known as a fallopian tube. And here, coming out of the sides attached to a ligament, are the ovaries. Ovaries are female gonads, and ovaries are what will produce the female egg, the oocyte. Women go through a cycle called the menstrual cycle each month, where they ovulate and they release an egg called an oocyte. This process is called ovulation. Here we have the oocyte, which is surrounded by a thick protective membrane called the zona pellucida. And surrounding the zona pellucida are cells of the corona radiate. If this oocyte, this egg, is not fertilized by a male sperm, what is known as a basically period occurs. However, if there was a bit of sperm swimming along in the uterine tube, and then the sperm meets and penetrates the oocyte, this process is then known as fertilization. The sperm is able to penetrate the zona pellucida using special enzymes on its head. Anyway, once fertilization occurs, a zygote is formed. A zygote is a fertilized egg, and this is our day one. The sperm's DNA and the oocyte's DNA mix to form literally one cell. That one cell then divides into two cells. Those two cells then divide into 4, then 8, then 16. This whole process, which occurs along the the uterine tube, is known as cleavage. What's interesting to know is that as these cells keep dividing, the whole structure actually does not get bigger, but the number of cells increase. And so they just basically they become compacted in this structure. And these cluster of cells are still within the zona pellucida. When there are about 16 cells clustered together in a ball, this collection of cells is known as a morula. And by this stage, it is day 4, post-fertilization. This morula will divide again and form a blastocyst, which is a collection of 32 or more cells. These cells that I'm talking about are essentially embryonic cells. So all these cells within the blastocyst are embryonic cells. The blastocyst is still surrounded by zona pellucida. The blastocyst will now implant into the growing uterine wall. The blastocyst I am drawing now is a cross-sectional view of the blastocyst. So we are cutting it in half and we're looking inside the blastocyst. So this blastocyst implants, and this is about day 7. Before the blastocyst implants, the blastocyst actually will shed the zona pellucida, which, if you remember, was the membrane surrounding the oocyte.
Okay. So when we can say that the 5 characteristics of human life are met, are fulfilled, each one of them. You have the characteristics, you're right, and the explanation of it seems so clear for me. When do you think? And why? Yes, Rosalind.
From day 1, when they start, basically self-movement can be seen and the cells start splitting into different cells and moving within the tract.
So normally normally the typical theory is in the fertilization. The fertilization of the egg by the sperm, okay? Normally, and it was the standard theory until probably 40 years ago, 30 years ago, more or less, when So many people began to experimentate in these kind of things with eggs fertilized, no? So there was a movement to say, well, the human life is not alive, doesn't appear until the annidation. Not remember ovulation, fertilization, and the annidation is the when the implanting the blastocysts in the uterus, no? Uterus. Well, but why? What changed in the when the zygote is in the uterus? Nothing. After in the fertilization, you can see that each one of the characteristics of the life, of any life, is meted. There is a self-movement, yes. You can see the self-movement clearly here, no? The principle of movement is inside, is within the zygote, in such a way that the zygote is dividing its cells little by little in 2, 4, 8, and so on, and so on. With a principle, and then all the, and we know very well, there is the DNA with a program, with the whole program for the whole life of this individual. There is a unity here, yes, there is a unity, and the same unity that the same individual will have until the death that could occur many years after the fertilization. There is an internal principle that contains all the movement of, yes, all the movement. You can see here also the color of the eyes of this individual. Even that, it's incredible, no? And how will be his or her behavior? Yeah, will be not the behavior of a lion, will be not the behavior of an ant. No, these have all the principle of movement of human being. Yeah, and the movement produces, well, is to grow, develop the perfection of the species. Yes, absolutely. All the species is in that cell, in the first cell, in the first cell. The principle ends up ordering to be an organism. Yes, you can see that here in the first cell is an organism. All things are working together to one aim, no? That will be the species, the species. So for me, it's so clear that here you have a human being, because you can check, put the 5 requirements in them, a check, saying, well, here in the fertilization you can have a human life. There were many, many judgments around the world, even in human rights court, in the Inter-American Human Rights Court in Europe, also saying no, we have to distinguish fertilization and conception. The conception is not the fertilization. And in those judgments, they say, well, there is a doubt. There is a doubt. That's so clearly. For example, in a judgment of 2012 in the Inter-American Court, there is a doubt if the human life begins in the fertilization or in the annidation, when the zygote is implanted in the uterus. But, well, seems to be that both the process begin in the second. Why? Why? Well, first, you have to apply the principle of precaution. If you don't know, you have to be careful. You cannot shoot to the head of anyone if you have a doubt that there will be a bullet in your gun. You cannot shoot against any door if you have a doubt about it. Behind that door there is a person. because you can be killing someone. So this specifically, this court said, well, there is a dog, but we will prefer that because it's more convincing for me, the anidation, than the fertilization. Another guy say, for example, no, there is human being and human life also in the sperm, also in the egg, because there is life. Yes, this is a kind of life, but there is not a life of a unity that works like an organism and will develop more than a day. Remember the usual standards of intellectual property to register new kinds of life. Well, it should survive at least some time, because that could be not registered. It's not properly alive, cannot grow, develop. It cannot be developed. The movement is more or less like a life dying, like the life of the apple when it's scooted from the plant. What happened? The principle of self-movement stops, and if you don't put that in the earth, will die. Yeah, it's the beginning of the end. No, it's the beginning of the end. So that's why Calvin was more or less right when he said, well, the apple have no life. In some sense, it is died, and will die at some point if we cannot put. But here we can see even better that here we have an organism that is working so well and have the whole principle of movement here inside. So for me, it's so clear that here, after the fertilization, we have a human being with life, no? And unity with life, and the whole life, the whole principle of self-movement is the whole principle. So it means that is in an individual different. We have not two things living, no, no, just one individual living. Okay, with this, sorry. Well, I want to show just the amazing movements of my presentation. In any case, if we conclude that, there will be just one option for these questions. Is the use of stem cells illicit? Well, here probably not just one conclusion. Second question. Let me see what happened with the questions. Cloning, do you think that is, well, we are treating human those things, or are not human those first cells? Cryopreservation is to fertilize many eggs to put in the freezer. Yeah. In the freezer, well, for experimentation, for many things, no? Embryonic reduction. What is embryonic reduction? The vivid techniques of reproduction used to fertilize more or less 5 to 9 eggs, many times 7 eggs normally, to put that and to choose the better one and to put in the uterus of the woman. So what they will do with the other 6 egg fertilized, well, they will kill them. The embryonic reduction. That is the embryonic reduction. As you can see, there is they don't want to name with the proper names the things. No, not to kill. No, these are reduction. These are reduction. They used to, from that time, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, some people are changing all the names. Yeah, there is not a child. No, it is a zygote. It's a zygote because it sounds better not to kill a child, but a zygote. and so on. So many. Well, we can change the names, but we have to realize when is a human being and when it is not. And finally, there could be, what do you think about genes therapy? Genes therapy. Well, I will say, genes therapy could be, but if it meets the requirements of the principles of the health and of life, obviously, no? If you put at risk, for example, in this first stage of the human being, well, you want to do a little surgery. Nowadays, we have not the technique for just for a few things, a technique to do a surgery inside of the uterus of the woman. Yeah, it's so risky. You are dealing with the life of the child, so it is not so easy. We said in other lectures that what about the use of the stem cells? Is licit or not is licit? Don't you remember the answer? Or you want to answer or not? No one of you. Is the use of stem cells licit or not? We said that we have to distinguish here. There are two kinds of stem cells. One are the zygotes. On the other, that is to say, the eggs-fertilized human beings. We cannot use human beings to help kill them to help another human being. We cannot do that. No, first. But there is another kind of stem cells, the adult stem cells that you can find in some part of the body. There's some techniques to use, for example, your blood or any part of your body, and to convert, to transform that cells into a stem cell, a cell with the potentiality to become any part of any tissue, any part of the body. That is so interesting. So if you take that cells, well, probably that is licit, no? There will be no problem because you are not killing anyone. You are using just another part of your body to reproduce some tissue that you need to survive, but it's not a person. But if you take one egg fertilized, it's quite different because there is a person there, no? There is an individual with human life, with the whole principle of life inside of that cell. That's why cloning, experimentation, and these kind of things putting at stake or risk a human being, but it's not always never a good thing. No? So after this, I want to return. Well, you can see that if you have a doubt, finally, I will repeat this idea. If you have a doubt if there is a human being or not, we cannot shoot our gun against that. There is a closed door, and we have doubts if there could be a human being behind that because we are hearing some noise or because something. We cannot shoot there because we can be killing a human being. This principle of precaution is so important on the field of the health, of the security, and many things, no? But many times it's not well accepted here, specifically in experimentation, and now in many, not in all of them, not in all countries. Many countries says that, well, there is a human life from the very beginning of the conception, and you cannot touch that. But in some human rights court, even if the treaty says, well, there is the right of a child to the protection of the lives from her conception, well, as happened in the American Covenant Convention. Well, the court says precisely the contrary. Well, you don't have to protect that, because that is not there is no right to life to any person that is conceived. It's incredible. It's directly in the case of the Human Rights Court of Inter-American Court, that is against absolutely to the text of the treaty. They say, well, there is no right. There is no, and the covenants say there is a right, and a specific of a person, because he said the person have right to life. There is two words in generally from the conception. And why there was two words? Because then there was a discussion, because some states were pro-abort. One state at that time, the sign of the covenant of the was pro-abortion, but say, well, let's give all of them a margin of appreciation. But now the court decided the contrary. No? You have all people that wants to abort, well, can abort. But, yeah. And what about the conception? And what about the notion of person in the pact, in the text? Well, I think that is against all things, specifically to the text of the convention. Well, let's see a little more the concept of life. Just one thing more, because it's so important to realize what it means, the protection of life. Music. Do you think that music is alive? Have some kind of life? Robots. Beautiful springs of water can have a kind of life. Well, I will say that a kind of life probably could be, because there is a metaphorical notion of life, the life of the spring waters. Obviously, the water have not the principle of self-movement inside, but it seems to be. Also robots. Robots are, we make robots, well, and saying you have to do this when it happened, and when this happened, and this, if this happened, you will react in that way. So the cause of the movement is not inside of the robot, it's outside, in the mind of the guy who build that kind of robot. Or, well, plant life and the characteristic. This is the classical view. No? The characteristics of the plant life is born, nurtured, health. Health is also to develop. It's related to nurture and to grow and reproduce. Animal life have a little more things. No, all things of plant life plus feeling and instinctively reacting to stimuli. And some of you told me that now life have a kind of reaction, yeah, but specifically the animal life, not the plant life, not the life of a bacteria or of a virus, for example. No, that is so different. No, a kind of reaction could have. No, in any case. And then there is a superior life also, the human life, that have all the things that the plant life have, all the things that animal life have, but two things in addition, no? The understanding, the intellect, and the will. And we can want, but it's so different, not just desire to have things, to have our stomach full. No, just want because we know that it's good for us. Rational wanting. Okay. And finally, there is another level, more deep even, that is the personal life. The personal life related to freedom, to self-donation, to the relation with other people. And well, this is so deep. Many philosophers used to put both together. Why are I remembering these things related to human life? When to the philosophy of kinds of life, because the right to life have to protect all those things. The right to life is a synthesis of the right to plant and life of the plant, animal life, human life, and personal life. It means that should protect the bond of the people, the natural health, growth, reproduction, plus the feelings, the instincts of the man, obviously when they help to fulfill human being, and with the principle of totality, you will remember that principle, and plus the capacity of the human being of understand and rationally want, and freedom, also self-donation to others. All these kind of things, I think that should be protected by the right to life. There are many case law that say, well, right to life is a very big notion that covers so many things, also health, that is so clear, but also a good life, a good life. That's why this slide shows you two guys singing with their guitars, and so on. So, after seeing that, we can now see just in a few minutes two kind of principles: the principles of life and the principles of health. If you understand well the principles, you will be able to resolve so many cases. Yet not, you will have all the tools to resolve all kind of cases related to life. For example, war. When we can go to war, or we can kill people or not, or in which way, or surgeries, or many things. So it is important to read carefully this part of the code. Probably you can see also the support and the relation with so many human rights treaties. Obviously, you have also the book, and you can see the case law related to human rights. I'm giving now you a more theoretical approach that is also in so many codes of ethics in medicine, for example. Okay, so the first principle of all of them is the principle of non-disposal. It's so easy, this one. No? No one can dispose of the life of a human being. Whatever the circumstances, this is so important. So, you can say, well, but what about a woman that is probably dying because he needs an abortion because if without that abortion, she will die. No, the ectopic cases, no, it's a special case because the implantation is not in the uterus, but in another part and the tube of the mother, and when the child is going developing and increasing the weight and the mass and the things, will destroy all the veins and all the things inside of the mother, and the mother and the child will die. That is the case. Well, that is not many constitutions law around the world say, well, this case you can do any kind of abortion. Well, but properly is not a crime. I don't know anyone that think that is a crime. Why? Because it's not an act of disposition of the life. In this case, it's so clearly. It's not an if the mother was able to decide, probably she will decide the life of the child and the life of the mother, both. But if she knows that is not possible, well, at least try to save as much lives as we can. In many cases, good to put two doctors, one for the mother and another for the child in those cases. But generally in those cases, the parents want the lives of both. No one disposed and say, I want that this individual die. No one say that. No. On the contrary, they want to live in the life of both, but they know that it's not possible. And well, let's try to save both, as much life as we can. That's why the second principle is quite related with this, no? A general non-kill rule, no? The minimal rule. The direct and voluntary elimination of an innocent human being is always gravely illicit. We cannot kill anyone that is innocent. Yeah, this is clearly. Or in easiest words, killing with the intention of killing is always a crime. In the case of the abortion that I mentioned you, there was no intention of killing anyone. All the efforts of the doctors and the nurses are just to help, to try to save as many lives as we can. Okay, that's why it's perfect. It's not a crime. That is always a good thing. Try to save lives. Then eugenic tanks also, no, as Hitler, no, that used to kill some people because they were their origin. Pro-life principle. This is clear. We have said something about this. In case of doubt about the existence of a human life, it will be considered that it exists and the human person subsists. Yeah. The precautionary principle, action, things, events, experiments that put a human life at risk should be avoided. The example of the gun. If you think that there is a possibility that there is one guy there, human life, you cannot shoot against that target. Given the possibility of being faced with a person's life, any action designed to destroy it is illegal. Every life is equal, yeah. Men, women, any color, any age, born. There is a special duty of help the life of the weakest. also, and this is clear in our treaties also, especially of medicine, related to medicine, and in many ethics and bioethics codes. Let's talk about health. Now it's different. It's not just proper life with the 5, but this health is more specific. First, we have to protect health, yes. But what it means health? Well, health is related to the principle of self-movement. That's why all pro-health principles stands first of all to save life, to save a life, not to kill anyone. Yeah. No, because to health is better to someone die. No, it makes no sense. It's a contradiction. Yeah. The principle of non-maleficence. This is one of the most important principles. All the bioethic schools accept this principle, and it's in many codes, in many laws, in many even treaties. No, and the phrase that you can see here is the phrase of Hippocrates. Hippocrates, I think that I don't know how to pronounce that name in English. That more than 2,000 years ago said, no one must be given a deadly drug or medical procedure, nor may anyone advise others to use such a drug or procedure. Any doctor that have to swear the Hippocrates oath that in the beginning of her profession, his career. So it is clear. A doctor cannot think in how to destroy the health or the life of the others. That is not a medical behavior activity doctors for. The principle of totality we have seen in the transplant, no? One part of the human body can be removed to save the human life and the unity of the total. That is the only, at the end of the day, that is the condition. No? We have to maintain the integrity, the unity, the totality. And if we cannot, well, let's try to maintain as much as we can. Principle of freedom of responsibility and responsibility. Anyone should decide what they will do with their own health, how to improve the health. There is not right to kill or not right to die. It is included in the right to life. That is a jurisprudence of the European or the European Court of Human Rights. They say the right to life doesn't include the right to die. It's the contrary. However, they say no, but we have to balance with another rights, privacy, other things. And in privacy, they put anything that they want. Yeah, so the principle, this is quite related with the last two ones. Principles that are so important, probably the most important to resolve hard cases. The principle of proportionality between damage, risk, and cures. We have seen that in the example of the transplants. No? If you will suffer very invasive and serious surgery, but at least you have some expectations of probabilities of success and recovery, and if not, well, better not to have that surgery. And well, obviously, no, there is a proportionality. And well, if you know, remember the theory of the transplant. We are applying in the transplant all these principles. No, if we know that we just with a pill I can resolve my problems. I have not the right to cut my finger, yeah, because it's so invasive. This probably no one will do that, yeah. But take this principle in your mind to resolve this case. Let me see. Well, the next case that I will put, yeah. Well, as you know, there is a movement today to avoid to any death penalty around the world. There are just, I think, 13 countries that maintains and use the death penalty. 13 countries more that have the death penalty in their constitution but never use. I think that from 30 years ago here in Kenya or more even, no one used that. You have to read a case law of 2017 and how it's avoided by the Supreme Court of Kenya, the penalty here. Probably you know this kind of thing. I'm not saying you anything new. But in any case, there is a movement. No? I think that any death penalty should be avoided, any one of them. Because, well, there is a kill with intention of kill someone, probably with some arguments. But the only case that I think that could someone can do that is when your life is at stake. In the old west, when the governor realized that, well, if I not kill this guy, he in some days will come with their band and will kill all of us. Well, well, probably it's just a legitimate defense. You will see the requirements of the legitimate defense. But nowadays, that kind of situations, well, are not longer common. No? So nowadays, I think that there is no case in which we can apply the death penalty. The jurisprudence of human rights say that it's more or less equal a crime against life, the enforced disappearances, yeah, because many times they finish death. No? They finish with an execution, summary executions, arbitrary, with no process, and with so the jurisprudence around the world on human rights say, well, the enforced disappearance is more or less like a crime against life. You will read this in the lectures, in the readings. This is the clinical case that I want to show you. And it's so easy. Try to read each letter. 3 years ago, a boy was in a terrible car accident and went immediately to the hospital. From that moment on, he is hooked up to a non-cheap and tedious machines to survive. Okay, more or less, this is the case. And the question, is it licit to disconnect that machine? What do you think about? Think that you are part of his family. Calvin, yes.
It depends. Does he want to be disconnected?
Sorry? Yeah, it's because it's a non-cheap machine. Yeah. So probably the family have some problems to pay that.
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, if we're going by the principle of pro-life, the family should do the best it can to keep the boy alive. But then again, there's also the practical aspect of finances. It may run the family dry. So I don't know if he wants to be disconnected, but then that's another. The moral consequences of that are also grave, that you assisted in killing him.
yeah,
Yeah.
you
So I
will
would
disconnect
say,
or not?
don't disconnect. Allow him to live.
You never will disconnect that.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you have to sell, if you are the parent of that child,
Yes.
And you have to sell your house and your land to maintain the life of your boy, what you will do?
I mean, of course, I'm going to say I'm going to sell the land and the house, but we're all speaking hypothetical here. It may be different in the reality. What if I have other children that also depend on me? Am I going to put my eggs in one basket? Am I going to forsake them for this one child? I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. But as we're speaking hypothetically, no, I would no. I mean, yes, I would sell the assets to pay for his.
Are you legally or morally binded to sell those things?
No, you're not. It's a choice that you make.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. That is not legally binding. Why? And not even the morality binds you to do that. Why? But why?
Why is it not legally binding?
Yeah.
I think because I don't think there are any laws on the subject that you must sell your assets to keep your children alive. I think it's known. It's like natural law.
Yeah. But try to explain. Natural law is reasonable law at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Try to get the reasons. Try to get the reasons to resolve this case.
Okay.
It's so easy. I just read it when I read I just read when I read the principles.
Okay. Then let me read the principles again. Maybe someone else can.
Yeah. Well, okay. We are on time for this part. But remember that there were two principles, the last two ones of health. Principle of proportionality and principles of ordinary means. You have to put, and it's as compulsory, to put the ordinary means. For example, if someone of your friends or your people need just a pill and you can buy with a 1,000 shillings that pill, and you have more than that, well, probably there is not a problem. Okay, you have to buy that pill and give to that guy. That is compulsory because it's ordinary. It's ordinary, yeah, and it's proportional. It's not so. But if you have to sell all your properties to save one, well, this is extraordinary, and because that the law, not the ethics, ask you to do that. The extraordinary things could be a heroic behavior, yes, but it's not compulsory. The law never will ask you to be a hero, never, no, the law, not even the ethics. The ethics, you will say, well, if you do that, it's a good thing, but you not need to do that, probably. Okay, that is quite interesting. But, and then, it's not just a matter many times of money. It's many times about also the extraordinary efforts of the guy. For example, if this machine is too serious, too invasive, and he has no well, to live with a lot of suffering, but with a lot of sufferings, probably this is not, no one asks you that, to do that, because it is an extraordinary suffering to live. And no one will ask you, not morality, I mean classical morality. And human rights court now, you know very well, that allows anything, especially in the north of Europe. You have euthanasia of children and euthanasia of people that sign. No, I never want to anyone to make me any kind of euthanasia. That they used to go to the Netherlands hospitals, but the doctors say, well, in this case, it's better if he's not so conscious now, and probably he will. And they give also to the people that never wants to do that. Euthanasia is incredible. Things that are is the culture of the dead. So it's a pity. So we have to distinguish this euthanasia and dystanesia, and in the middle is the good thing. No? Euthanasia is try to resolve the problem of heart, of suffering, killing someone. So this is a non-proportional measure. To resolve the problem of suffering, you have to give painkillers, yeah, not to kill anyone. It's not a proportionate measure. On the other hand, you have the dystanesia, this to give an artificial life to a person that passed away many times ago, many hours, many days ago, even, or trying to support the life of a person that is suffering so much, or with not proportional means. Both things are not so good. Yeah, normally, well, in the middle point is the clearest way to resolve that. No? Okay, you can read more the code here, but the reasons are more or less. Try to apply the reason specifically of proportionate and ordinary means. It's so important, the principle of the health and the principles of life. In the quizzes, I will put 1 or 2 questions on those things. So remember to study very well how to apply the principles of health. Okay. On the other hand, on the principles, everyone agrees. Also, every court. But they don't apply many times. No, they don't apply those principles. But you have in those principles in many case law, in many places, in many statute laws, and so on. So we have finished the right to life, at least an overview of these kind of things. And let's focus on the last topic of today: sex and sexuality. Obviously, it's not the same. No, probably you will have some idea of the difference between them. No, what is sex? What is sex? That is important today. No, 30 years ago, was so easy, so easy. What is sex? Well, to know, well, there are men and women. Nowadays, it's not so easy. But in any case, in many fields of the science, biology, and many other things, archaeology, you know that sex is the organic part of the body of two individuals of the same species, different and complementary, but complementary for what? There is a reason, which allows them to physically unite to reproduce and subsist as a species, conferring the species identity on the offspring. So it is related to reproduction. it is related to reproduction. The biologists used to say, well, there are species with two sexes and others with no sex, no? And it's quite interesting because the species with sex normally develop a kind of community of society or family to protect the species. We are part of that species. That's why we have family. Family is a consequence of the sexuality. That is because we are part of the species that have sex. Yeah, okay, that is so deep, so obvious, and so many times ignored. Ignored. The worst case that I saw, the worst case that I saw, at least in my opinion, anyone cannot have the opinion, is a judgment of the German court. There, say there is one person with some problems of identifying the sex, not the orientation. I'm not talking about the orientation. The sex, well, because was not so clear. The court decided that now we have three sexes: men, women, and another thing. Another thing. Well, at least this case law doesn't fit very well with the classical notion of sex. That is the thing that two individuals have in order to reproduce. This guy could have, well, a problem, a condition, a situation, I don't know, but obviously is not working to reproduce, to the reproduction. So this cannot be called the third sex, no? The third sex, no, because sex is something that allows two persons to reproduce, to unite, to reproduce, and to give the identity to the offspring. That is so clear, no? You have this, well, you can decide, well, this is a male or a female or not, that's all, in any species, Well, just to remember obvious things, I think so, no? Sex is something that is received from progenitors and belongs to the order of being. Remember, to reproduce and to give the identity of the species, and there are species with two sexes, and there are species with no sex, with a single sex, we can say, no? The way of reproduction is so different, and the consequence of making families, communities, and so on also. So is received. There are only two sexes capable of reproduction, the male and the female. The one that contributes outside of itself, that is probably philosophically so deep, no? One that gives and another that receives, more or less. Also in the plant, no? You can see, well, a kind of work. So, quite different is sexuality. Sexuality is a manifestation, is the way of being and living based on the sex. In sex of the species, it implies a potential paternity or maternity, a potential, no? So in the way of the behavior of each sex, well, is according to the sex, no? Attention to a complementary health with the opposite sex also. In the human being, the body, the intelligence, and the will, and the whole person and actions, and the biography are involved in this sexual condition. Yeah. If you use the word of Foucault, yes, we will say there are some roles attributed by the society, but taking care of the identity of each one. The roles could help or could go against the person. Both things, no? the role of the policeman that could be, well, you have to be not to accept briberies, money not well get. Well, that is the role, and I think that is a good role. There is the integrity of the policeman. Well, that is a good role. There could be, well, things that change, yeah, but more or less should help. So let's continue with this. At the very beginning of the existence of human, there is a need to the recognition of the sex, and probably to a registration of that sex in some official place, office, department, as you know. Society and the family have the legal duty to recognize the sex of the newborn based on the phenotypic bodily elements. You can read a little more in the readings, even more in the support. There is a right and a duty to accept the sexual identity. Obviously, things that remain in the private spheres is quite different, but you cannot go to anyone saying, well, I'm considering that I'm not a man. I consider that I'm a woman. At least you have to say, well, I changed my sex by any surgery, because there is a public duty to express what we are. Not when it remains in private spheres could be a little different. But I will mention a case. That a guy that one day that married someone. After some years, they realized that they cannot have children. No? And after some years, he discovered that the other was not properly a male, at least at the beginning of his life, but a boy. And he did an operation, a surgery, a change of sex. They call change of sex. That is not so clear always what it is, because if with the definition, no, that it, well, and I guess, but he lied. He was a liar about his identity. He never told to the other about this surgery, and never, well, obviously, he or she, whatever you want, should say this important issue that could harm the marriage life. No? This is a duty. In some cases, you have the duty to explain things. So there is a duty in this case. Well, and well, obviously, it is contrary to human dignity that a man is not treated as a man, or that a woman is not treated as a woman. So you have the right to develop ourselves and our identity. Remember the thing that we talk about. The identity is not what we want. There could be some part of the identity, non-core identity, that could be on our will. To put likes, to be a criminal or a hero, well, that is. But in things related to our body is a matter of fact. Matter of fact. No? Well, to the hello, well, you will read this. I think that the important thing here is the thing, well, to realize about rights and duties. We have the same rights and duties or not, men and women? All of you will say yes. I don't know. Yeah, I will say yes, but almost always, but in some of them there should be a complementarity in things related to the warmth of the newborn. Man and woman enjoy equal dignity. This is so clear nowadays. In general, both enjoy the same rights and duties. That is also clear. For what is exclusive to women and men, there are some exclusive things of each one. Both enjoy reciprocal and complementary rights in the things related to the warmth of the newborn, of the children. You know very well how children born. But I will also add this thing. The feminine or masculine tendencies can eventually accentuate some rights, duties, or legal positions. Because we are not the same, men and women. Obviously, what things are proper to the woman? Well, in exclusive, her feminine sexual condition, the sex, obviously, as a receptor sexual organs, and the functions related to the motherhood linked to such organs. Women cannot do that simply. This is exclusive for women. I think that I am saying obvious things here, no? But there are so many other things that there is a tendency. Women used to have greater capacities for some specific things. For example, to assimilate, to remember, and compare. I'm really surprised with these things on women because I'm not able to do that. Look at the concrete, focusing on details. Well, that's why they usually have more sensitivity to many details, no? To many details at home, at school, at any company. Good to have women to see the details many times, no? For the intuition, there's sixth sense, the intuition and acuity of which to welcome, to know, to talk, to socialize with people. Yeah, this is quite evident. There are some statistics that says that usually, I don't remember very well now, but seems to be that women speak, at least in one country, 5,000 words a day, and men just 3,000 words a day. So it means that we are different. We are different in this, always in statistics. 5, they have a more deeply rooted emotions, feelings, and volitional habits. No, that's why sexual harassment is not the same in women that in men. They suffer more. And if these kind of things are good, they have more generous, have more strength for many things. Also, it could be the contrary. They can root emotions to hate one, and when you see a woman hating, is more than we can do, right? For good or for bad. Also, our tendencies. Obviously, you can see, well, there is a man that with the same characteristics. Yeah, it's possible because it's just a tendency. Our exclusive thing is our masculine sexual condition and organs. No? But we have a tendency, probably some women will have the same, but it's just a tendency to be focused on a special job. When we are working, we forget that the whole world exists. Instead of that, women can work in many things at the same time. We cannot do that simply. For the abstract, rational, and not very passionate vision. We are too theoretical many times. For the solution of problems and conflicts, no, because well, we have not that emotions, or no, we have in some sense, a kind of peace that allow us to resolve with cold mind, cold head. For the technique and exact domain of things, you can see also in the toys of the children of 1 month, well, it's so different, the toys. Yeah, because you will see, you should see the video. I will ask some question of the video of this lecture. You should see that video of the toys of the children. I mean the toys of the children just after the born, and to produce things and draw up long-term projects. Well, yeah, because we are theoretical, more theoretical than women. Well, with these things, you can see that it's good to have both in each project because we are complementary. That is, for me, an obvious thing, that we are complementary, no? And we should help each other. And with this, at least for today, we finish. And as always, if you have any question, any doubt, or anything,